Hey, good afternoon. We are live today with Courtney Cain. She is transitioning from the Navy soon. I'm Matt Quick with HireMilitary, Director of Training and Development. So, Courtney, I talked to her today, and I'll tell you, I had a cancellation last minute for this time slot. We're gonna do this every day, hopefully, for the next few weeks. Is really highlight a transition service member. So she said, "I'll do it." I'm like, "Wow! First of all, thank you because I didn't want to come here by myself. I would have, but she saved my life today." So, hey, let's get started. Courtney is transitioning after a few years in the Navy. She's doing great stuff at a great location. So, Courtney, hey, tell us about yourself and how's the Navy been treating you?
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely.
When I got your email, I think it was 10 o'clock, and you said we had a slot for 12:30, and I was like, oh my God, the first thing I thought was, I got to pluck my eyebrows.
I like that. I didn't do mine today, though, but thank you for doing yours.
I wanted to be LinkedIn Live ready. So I will be retiring in November, the end of November this year, after 21 years and 4 months of service in the Navy.
Oh, wow.
The world's finest Navy. Yay.
World's finest.
Yes. So I joined the Navy back in 1999. I had gone to college for about a year and a half, and then we kind of had some financial issues at home, and my parents couldn't continue to pay for me to go to school. So I came back home, and I had been home. I was working. I had a full-time job. I think I was doing data entry, and it wasn't bad. I had my first grown-up job. I had my benefits and everything, but my life really wasn't moving forward. And I knew I wanted to go back to school to finish my degree. And we were in the car one day. It was me, my mother, and my sister. And my mother mentioned something about my sister joining the military. But my sister had asthma. So I was like, well, Janelle can't join, so maybe I can. So when I got home that day, I had one of those flyers in the mail from the recruiter. So I was like, that's
So
weird.
sneaky.
I know. So I filled it out. And a couple of days later, the recruiter called me. And then I went down. I took a practice ASVAB. And it was history from there. I left. I went to boot camp in July. And it was in Great Lakes. And it was hot. It was so hot. I didn't realize it was going to be that hot. And I'm from New York. So, I'm kind of used to the summer heat. But it was a different kind of heat in Great Lakes because we had on, I felt like it was 3 layers of clothes. Like we had on our, undergarments and sports bras, and we had on shorts and a t-shirt, and then long sleeve shirts and long pants and boots and those heavy, thick socks. So
doesn't make sense sometimes.
No, not at all. And at that time, I want to say my division commander told us like every week we marched 35 miles. So I was like, so we're marching out in the hot sun with all of these clothes on, and you don't think somebody's not going to die or pass out?
Heat stroke, hello.
Right. So, but we survived. So the first 2 years I was in the Navy, I was in school, I was in training. So I started out as an electronics technician. So I went to school in Great Lakes for 9 months, I think it was. And then I went to a C school down in Pensacola. And that was my first time going down to Pensacola. And I figured since it's Florida, it's going to be warm.
Of course.
Not on the Gulf Coast. Not on the Gulf Coast. It gets cold.
What's happening here?
Right. I was so confused.
You left New York for this warm weather.
Right. And I didn't get it. But then I was stationed in San Diego for 8 years.
Okay.
And that was great. I loved everything about San Diego. It was amazing. And I was on my first ship when I was in San Diego.
It was warm there too, right? Actually warm.
Yes, actually warm. Yes. It was actually warm year round. It was nice. I loved it in San Diego. So we were there for 8 years. And after that, I went to Italy for 2 years. And that was great. It was amazing. And we got to travel all over Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got to travel all over Europe, which was amazing. It was a great experience for my daughter. Then I came back and I went back to Pensacola. Mm-hmm. So this time I got to be an instructor for ITA school, which I had always wanted to be. I originally wanted to be an RDC, a recruit division commander back in Great Lakes. But for my rate, ITs, they weren't allowing us to do that because they needed us at overseas locations and on ships and everywhere else. So they were like,
so you're too important to go recruit, right?
Yes.
But basically. You wanted to recruit.
I did. I really wanted to do it because I thought I would be really good at it. And my RDCs, I just thought they were wonderful. And it was funny because back in 2017, I was in Virginia Beach and I saw my RDC from 1999. And I walked into a building and he walked past me. He looked at me. He was like, I know you. And I looked him in the face and I was like, I know you too. Oh my gosh. So, just the fact that so many years later he remembered me and he
Small
had
world,
such,
right?
yeah, oh, yes. Yes. And he had he left such an impression on me. And I was just like, thank you, because you really set me up for success in the Navy. Because when I came in, I turned 21 in boot camp.
Ooh,
And,
that's a good birthday present. Did you get a drink?
what is that?
No drinking though?
I got a lot of water.
Okay, that's good. That's good for you.
Right. Because it was August.
It's memorable
And,
though.
huh?
It's memorable though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was a knucklehead. I'm not gonna lie. And I thought I knew everything because I was almost 21, and there were people in my division who were like 17 and 18. So I was like, I know more than these kids. I was kind of a knucklehead, and we had a few conversations where he had to set me straight. And he was like, "You joined the Navy for a reason, right? Don't throw it away because you're letting your attitude get in the way of you doing good things." And he knew the school and I was going to, and he knew I had the potential to do great things in the military. So he was like, "Don't get in your own way. Just listen to what we're telling you because we're not going to tell you anything wrong. We're not going to let anything happen to you.
Yeah.
You need to trust us." And I was just like,
That's a powerful mentor right there.
Yeah. So at the time, I was just like, okay, I'm going to do whatever you say to get out of this place because it's so hot and there has to be something better than this.
Positive attitude. I like that.
But that was something that kind of stayed with me the whole way. And it's funny because over the weekend, I got an email from a girl who was on my second shift when we were in San Diego. So this was about 2006, 2007. And at the time I had just made E6. So, I was a little older, and she was fairly young in the Navy. I want to say this was her first ship. So she had maybe been in a year or two.
Okay.
And, we became friends. She was a sweet girl, and she was kind of rough around the edges. And I would talk to her, kind of keep her out of trouble on more than one occasion.
I'm sure she's appreciative of that.
Right. And then the email, because I haven't talked to her. I haven't seen her because she got out the military. And I haven't talked to her in probably 8 years.
Okay.
So she sent me an email. I was like, "Is this still your email?" And I replied back. I was like, "Yeah, it is." And we talking back and forth. And she was like, "I don't have a lot of memories of my time in the Navy, but I remember how you kind of took me under your wing and stopped me from being such a knucklehead. And you kind of mentored me, unofficially. And I really appreciate you not, you looking out for me and making sure that I didn't do a lot of dumb things."
And that's good. So you paid that forward then.
Yeah. I remember how it was. And I wanted to be an instructor because I wanted to be able to teach the young sailors coming in the lessons that I learned. And I wanted them to learn them sooner rather than later, just so they could make more informed decisions in their military career and not let, whatever they had before they came in the military kind of mess up what it was that they were trying to do in the military. Because we all joined for a reason.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't want to, get in your own way or let your old ways of thinking, kind of clash and conflict with what the military is trying to teach you to do, which is always going to be, for your benefit. It may not seem like it's for your benefit at the time.
Oh, yeah. And sometimes your ego gets in your way. And believe me, there's a bunch of knuckleheads out there that join the military. Truth be told, I was one of those. I needed the Marine Corps first, and then I needed an easier life, so I joined the Army, which wasn't – it was easier, but not as – it was different. But the Marine Corps gave me a good foundation. And like you said, I had good mentors as well that helped me along the way. And the Marine Corps, they teach you to be cocky and confident, but sometimes you leave the confidence just to be cocky. So it's a weird formula. So where do you work now and what do you do?
So right now I'm at the Pentagon. This is my last duty station since I'm retiring in November.
Okay.
So how I got here was actually through networking. So I see a lot of
Whoa,
posts on LinkedIn.
Stop. Say that again.
Yes, networking. We network in the military.
Good for you. good lesson learned for everybody else out there. You still network in the military, and you'll keep doing it outside of the military. Go
Yes.
on.
I see a lot of posts, the transition posts, and they're like, "Oh, we don't know how to network." You do know how to network
Yes.
because well, for me, the Navy is like a barter system, right? And on board ships, you have every rate, and the smaller the ship, the closer everybody is. But you still have to get to know people because there are
Mm-hmm.
going to be things that you want or need that you don't have, and you have to figure out how you're going to get that, right? So you just and we depend on each other so much when we're out to sea because if something happens, if there's a fire, we're out there by ourselves. We have to get it under control. So we really have to depend on each other and we have to network together. So I was on the carrier George H.W. Bush. That was my last deployment.
Okay.
So when did we leave? We left in January 2017. Yeah, it was so cold. Oh my God, it was so cold.
It's always cold for you.
I know. Just can't get away from the cold. But the funny thing about that, towards the end of deployment, it was summertime, right? So I was like, okay, we're in the Gulf. It's gonna be hot. It's gonna be good times. No, we were like super close to the North Pole, and it was freezing cold.
You can't catch a break, can you?
I cannot. And it was like 11 o'clock at night, and the sun was still up. And I was like, what is going on here? What are we doing? But anyway.
Oh goodness.
I can't. So the the way we get our assignments in the Navy, we have detailers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're detailed based on your geographic location, your pay grade, and your rate. So they do just the normal, you go to school, go to a ship, go to a command or whatever. But then we have a lot of special programs in the Navy, and we have special program detailers. So our detailer for our E7 through E9, she was like the overall detailer for all the detailers. And
Okay.
she sent out a message to all the Master Chiefs, which are E9s,
Okay.
that they were looking to fill jobs at the Pentagon. So at the time, the ship was in Norfolk. We were in Virginia Beach, and I was a Geo Bachelor. My husband and the kids were down in Florida. And then they
Probably
moved.
warm, right?
Yeah. And then they moved up to Pax River.
Okay.
So there was one billet for an ITC at Pax River, and we had almost the same rotation date, but I didn't want to chance not being able to get that billet.
Yeah.
To, come up to be with my family when I was finished on the ship. So we were having lunch, on the ship like we do every day. And one of my friends, Aaron, who's now a chief warrant officer, he asked me, he was like, hey, did you see that email about the job at the Pentagon? And I said, no, I didn't see this email. So he was like, okay, I'll forward it to you. And I'm like, okay. So I got the email from him. I read through it, what the requirements were for the program. I put in my application. My detailer released me to the special programs detailer.
Okay.
Then I had to fill out the paperwork because there's always a ton of paperwork.
Always paperwork.
Yeah, so all the paperwork. And then, oh my God, I had to do an interview.
Say it's not so.
Yes, an interview. And you know how I did my interview? Via a video teleconference.
Like this.
Exactly like this.
But hey, this is more casual, right?
Oh, definitely.
You're welcome.
And I have on regular clothes, no uniform. So I did the interview, and then maybe a month or two later, I got the email said that I had been accepted for the job. So I was super excited because that meant I got to leave the ship 6 months early. So
It's a blessing.
Yes. I would get to be back with my family 6 months sooner than we had anticipated, which was great. And it was the beginning of my daughter's senior year of high school. So I knew I was going to be here for that. Good. Yeah. So it all worked out, and it all happened because of networking.
Networking, it doesn't change even though you leave the military. It's enhanced, but you get all the foundation from the military, networking, interviews. Right. So on your ship, because I spent in the Marine Corps, I spent 6 months on a ship.
Okay.
Which were a tough time back in the mid 90s. I don't know. And when you cross the Atlantic, it can get kind of scary if someone doesn't do ship duty that often. And it took 2 weeks to get across the Atlantic to, I think it was Spain. And that ship, we were on an LPD. It's smaller than the George Washington, but it was rocking and rolling every night, every day. But
Yeah.
That's good though. We appreciate your sea duty. Uh, Listen, if you want to join the Navy, it's a great career, right?
It is. It is. And I think a lot of people are afraid of shipboard life, but shipboard life is great. And when I was an instructor, I had been away from a ship for maybe 5 years.
Okay.
And then we were down in Pensacola and we went to the USS Alabama, the battleship. And we spent the night there because we had a whole training evolution to do. And when I was on the ship, I remember mentioning to my mentor, I was like, I love it. This is great. I miss being on a ship. And he looked at me like I was crazy. But ship life is great. And if you're on a smaller ship, like I said before, the crew is very small. So either you love each other or you hate each other. And most of the time, you're going to love each other.
Yeah,
And
there are those some times that you hate each other, but you get over that. You go outside, go on the deck, catch your
yeah,
breath. You get
yep.
some what's the ship's door called?
It's just a short, well, we call it Gee Dunk, but it's just a ship store. Yeah, you
Yeah,
get you some
there
Gee
you go.
Dunk.
There you go. Oh goodness.
But
You're
the
gonna miss the
stars are,
military, aren't you?
what's that?
You're gonna miss the military, aren't you?
I am. I am. I really am. I didn't think I would. You know, there were those times when I was just like, what am I doing with my life? Why am I doing this? Why am I standing here to be tortured and yelled at by somebody that I
Yeah.
just want to throw over the side of the ship?
So besides the transition, besides your ship duty and your Pentagon duties, which I tell you, it seems like a pretty good career. So I was looking through your LinkedIn account because that's who I am. So if you come on here, I'll look through your LinkedIn account to find little nuggets to talk about.
Okay.
So you're also a personal financial advisor in the Navy. How's that work out? And what advice can you give a transitioning naval person advice on?
Okay. So when I was deciding on what degree I was going to pursue, when I restarted my education, I started off in accounting, but then I decided to go to finance because I wanted to be a personal financial advisor. So I wanted to learn all that I could about money and how it worked.
That's
And I
smart.
feel like I had done pretty well for myself because when I joined the Navy, I wasn't making a whole lot of money. I want to say my first paychecks after boot camp were like $400 every 2 weeks.
Felt good,
And then,
right?
yeah, it did. And I was excited when I found out we were getting a raise. I was like, oh, we get a raise in January. This is great. So I went from making 404 to 424. I was like,
That's not bad at
awesome.
all.
So I quickly had to learn how to manage my own money so I could have some. um, so when I was in Italy, I had been taking the finance classes,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of had a knack for personal finance. I'm not going to lie, because I was reading a lot of books and, following people who were talking about money and figuring out what applied to me, what I could use, what I couldn't use, what made sense for my situation and what didn't make sense for me. And I've always wanted to be a teacher. So when I had the opportunity to become a command financial specialist, that's what we call
Mm-hmm.
it, I jumped on it because I was like, well, I can touch a lot of people and talk to a lot of people about money. And at our command, I'm trying to remember how many people. It was a pretty large command, so we had a lot of people.
So you can impact a lot of people talking about
Right,
finances.
right. And at the time when we were in Italy, like I was telling you before, um, there was a huge need for ITs to go to overseas
Mm-hmm.
locations, and they were offering assignment incentive pay. So when you put in your application, you had to bid for how much you'd be willing to take an extra pay while you were over there. So in addition to my base pay, I lived on base, so I was just getting my food allowance.
Mm-hmm.
I was getting an extra $1,600 a month in assignment incentive pay. And most people that were over there were getting that money because at the time it was just so hard for people to take orders overseas.
Okay.
So there were a lot of people over there making a lot of money. So I figured, hey, we have to kind of get together and make sure we're making sound financial decisions because, if we go back stateside, we're not going to be making this kind of money, back in
No.
America. not at all. But a lot of people, they would stay overseas just because they were making so much money. But I knew I wanted to come back home, and we were starting to get a lot of very junior people over there in Italy. And at the time, the euro was pretty strong,
Hmm.
so they were getting a lot of the cola was pretty high, and they had a lot of our once people made E4, they had to move out in town.
Yeah, and the
So
cola is what, for those that don't know what it is?
oh, cost of living allowance to make
Okay.
up for the difference between the value of the dollar and at the time the euro. So whenever you're overseas, and in some locations here in the U.S., like in Hawaii, you get cola. We should get cola here in DC because it's so expensive.
Yes,
But
I had 2 tours in DC. You're absolutely right.
yes, we definitely need it. So we had to get our young sailors prepared to move out in town
Hmm.
and all the costs and expenses that come with that. Now, living overseas, you get the housing allowance, which is going to equal your rent. So you would just pay, they would pay it directly to the landlord. But then you would also get money for utilities. And then, of course, you had to eat. And then you
Hmm.
needed a vehicle to get back and forth to work because the bases were so spread out.
So it's not cheap
So
though.
if you were living, no, not cheap at all. And we would get the ration coupons for gas, but you still needed money if you used all your gas or something.
True.
So we had to help them with budgeting just to make sure, because I think people are just not aware of how much it costs to live, and that's a big part of where I think some people run into problems. And I think for some people, their parents were kind of in a really good position, and they
Hmm.
kind of feel like, oh, well, that's how I grew up, so this is how I need to start. But you can't start where your parents were, as you were growing up. You kind of have to work your way up to that.
It's kind of like you and I right now in the military. We're at retirement eligibility, and people could see us as, well, you've made it, but they don't see the amount of work we put into getting here. And it was still tough, and
Right.
it's a different route. But
Yeah.
just because you see someone on LinkedIn that's, doing so well, or you think they're doing well, there's still a lot of work that goes into this. And for you, financial assistance for the junior service members, that was, I'm sure, a huge impact to them and their way of life, right?
Yeah. I would like to think it was. And at the time when I was in Italy, I had a car, but my car was like 11 years old, I think it was.
So it's
And
newer than, right, for overseas.
and I would tell people all the time, don't buy a new car every 3 or 4 years. Like it's a depreciating asset. You're not getting any value out of it. Why do you need a new car? If your car still runs and it works and it gets you to where you need to go, then just keep it. But
Status
at the
symbol. Why
time,
wouldn't you get a new car for 3 years?
I'm not gonna lie, my air conditioning didn't work in my car. So I was in Italy and it was actually hot, and it was a long summer.
You can't win again. Hot, too cold.
I just can't. But um, yeah, we would talk about TSP because
Oh,
that was a
good.
big thing, and I think for a lot of young people, they don't think about, well, I'm going to be, I won't need this money for 60 years, but this is the time to think about it, because if you start when you're
Yes.
younger, you don't have to save as much, and you
Hmm.
save over such a longer period of time, and the time value of money and compound interest, it works in your favor.
Now
It
you're
really
speaking
does.
financial terms way above our heads now. I can tell you're a financial person now. So if you can give someone a piece of advice on the way out, whether they're retiring or separating, what advice would you give them, financially speaking, about some of the decisions you had to make?
Okay, so financially speaking, well, the advice is different if you're single or if you're
Hmm.
married and you have a family, right? Because if you're single, you don't really have anybody depending on your income,
Hmm.
right? And you have a little more flexibility to, maybe move around or go to school for a little while to try and figure out what it is that you want to do.
Hmm.
But if you have a family, then you need to be thinking about your family and what will happen if something happens to you. Now, nobody ever wants to think about death and talk about death, but
It's going to happen
nobody's
eventually.
right. Everybody is going to die eventually. So you have to plan for that. So one of the things that we did when my husband and I got married, we got life insurance policies. And we got term life insurance because my husband is his parents' only child. And they
Okay.
were older, and his dad was sick. He had cancer and he recovered, but he was in remission, but he was still kind of sick. And I knew that if something happened to my husband, it would fall to me to take care of his parents. So I told him, I was like, well, we need to get these life insurance policies. And at first he was hesitant about it. And I was surprised. I was like, wait a minute, what? No, I need money to take, because you're not gonna be here, so I won't have your income. It'll just
True.
be me. And we have 3 kids, and then I would still need to take care of your parents. That's a big burden for me to carry on my own with
Yes.
my E6, E7 pay. So it took a little bit of convincing, and I was kind of surprised because I thought, when I brought the idea to him, he'd say, "Oh, sure, babe, let's do it." But he was like, they have to do a physical, and I have to get blood drawn, and there's needles. What? I was like, what?
So you had to educate your husband on finances, right?
I did. I had to. I really had to explain to him and let him know, hey, this is our family planning. It's not really about the money. It's about having everything that we need in case something happens to you.
Yes, just in case. And I'll tell you my experience. When I was in the military, I didn't do the Survivor Benefit Plan, the SBP. I just declined that, and I felt bad for declining that because the way it was sold to me by the transition service center was, "Hey, this is what the Army offers you. You should take this." So I looked at it. I had 48 hours to think about it. So within those 48 hours, I educated myself on what it is, and
Mm-hmm.
I took term life, a 30-year term for about $1 million. I said, "This is what I want." So my wife and I declined the SBP, got a 30-year term. And for me, it was so inexpensive. And people will say, well, there's no return of that. The return is 30 years of peace of mind.
Yes,
So I
absolutely.
retired. I was like 42 or 43 when I got my policy. So
Mm-hmm.
until 73, if I die, my family's taken care of. So it's an investment in my family and my own peace of mind. So those that say that, just look at it, look at all the scenarios, talk to Courtney because she'll tell you her story too because she's good at it.
Thanks, Matt.
So besides the
And
transition, are you go ahead.
oh, I was gonna say, and I've heard that a lot of people are saying that you should do your if you're going to get life insurance term or a whole life policy, do it before you do your VA exams and everything for your disability, because I think once the VA figures out how broken we are, it'll be a lot harder to get life insurance policies.
That's good
So
advice. And
yeah.
that's the advice, right? Because I did the same thing, and
Mm-hmm.
I think for a lot of people, if you do it afterwards, your premiums may skyrocket, maybe even double.
Yeah.
Then you may want to get SBP. So do it early. I'm seeing people now get life insurance 5 years before they want to get out, just to get the cheapest rate for 30 years or so. But
Okay.
it's hey, each person's different.
Yeah.
Get with an expert or mentor that's who helped me
Mhm.
out, and we'll go with that. So you're in college too now, right?
I am. I am going to Georgetown University,
Go
and I'm working.
Hoyas.
Yes, go Hoyas.
All right.
I'm working on my master's degree in cybersecurity risk management.
Is that what you
And
want to do when you get out and just do cybersecurity?
yes.
That was a very long pause there.
Okay, so I'll explain the pause. Like I
Okay.
said before, my undergrad degree is in finance
Uh-huh.
because, I love money, talk about money and all that stuff with money. However, I've been doing IT work in the Navy 16 years of my career. So my thinking is when I get out, just to make the transition a little bit smoother for myself, that I would go into a cybersecurity type of role just to get more comfortable, being back in the civilian world and
Hmm.
working a regular 9 to 5 again.
Makes sense.
And then maybe be in the financial services industry. So I'm in the industry, dealing with money, and then maybe I could cross over to a different, maybe more financially related role. So
And that makes sense. So you're playing different focus areas to get to a certain goal. So you're not pigeonholing yourself into one specific industry. You're doing two or three to figure out what is best for you, and you'll figure that out. Your first job or two may not be your dream jobs, but eventually you'll land your dream job. You're like, this is what I want to do. That's good. So what resources have you used that you want to talk about as you transition, whether it's ACP, HireMilitary, 4Block? What have you used?
Okay, so
Oh, it's the good stuff now. Getting excited.
so there was a time back in 2014 when I was seriously anticipating separating from the military. So at that time, I had gone through TAP class when it used to be called TAP class for the Navy. Now it's
Okay.
transition goals and plans for success. So I had gone through TAP class, and I had a mentor through American Corporate Partners because I remember someone mentioned it to me. Um, and at my TAP class, which was taught by a retired gunnery sergeant who was amazing, he mentioned LinkedIn, and I hadn't heard of it. I was like, "What is this LinkedIn thing?"
I know. What is LinkedIn?
Right. So I was like, "What is Gunny talking about?" But Gunny is telling me, so we need to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
So I created a LinkedIn account, and I populated my stuff. Then I would get hits from recruiters, and I got an email from a recruiter, Edward Jones. So I was like, oh, Edward Jones, oh, this is amazing.
They're reaching out to me.
Huh?
They're reaching out to me, yes.
Right. So I had gone through the whole hiring process at Edward Jones, and I was weeks away from starting because the way they do it with the financial advisors, you do home study to study for the Series 7 and 63 certification exams. Like they send you all the material you need and everything. Actually, I had the laptop at my house, and then I found out I got promoted. So I was going to be a Navy chief, and it is a
suck you
big
back in, don't they?
It's a big deal to be a chief. It really
Absolutely.
is. So I sat down with my husband, and I was like, I don't think I can leave. He's like, I know you wanted to be a chief for so long, so you might as well just stay. And I was like, okay, let's do this.
The pinnacle.
Right. So fast forward 6 years now, at the Pentagon, and I'm like, okay. We moved. We're in DC now. We're in the DC area. My youngest son, he just turned 8 over the weekend, and we have 2 older girls. My
Happy
oldest.
birthday.
Oh, thank you. I'll let him know you said that. So my oldest daughter, she just graduated from George Mason last December. She's working, and then my middle daughter, she's in college as well. She's finishing up her second year of school. So we had moved a lot. Like my middle daughter, she had gone to 7 schools before she graduated high schools.
Wow.
Yeah.
Resilient right there.
And I didn't want that for my son. So I said, okay, this is going to be it for me. We're going to settle here in DC, and this is where we're going to make our life. So when I decided that, I was going to retire, I started looking back at the resources I had used before. And because I was at Georgetown, what they do when you identify as a military service member or veteran or spouse, they add you to the mailing list for the military office. Like they have an entire military office at Georgetown. So they send out a newsletter every week. So I always read the newsletter, find out what's going on at the school. And one week in the newsletter, this was last November, I think it was, at the very bottom, it was like a 2-line blurb about 4Block. There were no graphics or anything. It was just, hey, 4Block for transitioning service members. I was like, what is this? So I clicked on the website, and I was like, oh, this sounds amazing. So for those of you who don't know what 4Block is, it's a 10-week program. And once a week in the evenings, you go to different corporate offices, and you meet hiring managers, people who work there, and other decision makers of these big corporations. For DC, we went to Ernst & Young, Guidehouse, Capital One, Amazon Web Services, KPMG, Red Horse, which was new.
Okay.
So we had unprecedented access to people who could make hiring decisions. And it was 10 weeks, and it was great. The first 6 weeks, we were in person. Then, of course, COVID happened. So we transitioned to virtual the last 4 weeks. It was still good, but it wasn't the same because the in-person networking was amazing.
Yeah.
And you had the opportunity to meet so many different people you would never meet, in your normal everyday working life. And the companies, they were the most gracious hosts. They provided food. Sometimes they were, adult beverages. It was great. And the people at the companies were just so excited to meet with us and interact with us and offer whatever career advice that they could. And every week, we had a different assignment. So we worked on our resumes. We worked on our elevator pitches every week. We had to give
Okay,
our
that's
elevator
important.
pitch. Yes, we had to give our elevator pitch to the companies every week. So we practiced those, every week for 10 weeks, and that was great. Um, we worked on triangulating your job search, researching the market that you're in for opportunities. And there was just so many amazing things. And I want to say there were 40 people in our cohort. And we had our two main instructors, and then the regional director, Eric Stetson, he would come down.
Okay.
Lisa Stern, she came to a few of our engagements. And then we were broken up into smaller groups, and we all had career coaches. And our coaches had either gone through 4Block or had been somehow affiliated with the military, and they were coming back to pay it forward to us, to help us with our transition, because they had already, they had gone through it.
And that's gracious. That's good.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm so excited to go back and, be a coach or volunteer, help out in whatever way I can once, my transition is finished.
And that's important. Even right now, you're helping so many others because you're talking about 4Block. And so Courtney Cain, do you recommend 4Block to others?
I absolutely recommend 4Block.
And I don't mind. I don't mean putting on the spot, but do you want to go over your elevator pitch now with us?
Oh,
if you want, no pressure, no pressure. If you want to.
Wow, man, I wasn't ready for that one.
All right. Well, hey, we'll take a pause on that real fast, but
at the end.
when this is over, you can look back at the comments because there's 135 comments right now on this video. So you can go back and comment, and you can give people your elevator pitch or present them with it and help them out a little bit. Be their mentor.
Okay.
So,
one more thing?
Go ahead.
So here in DC, we have the Veteran Leadership Council, which is another networking group for veterans in the area. And of course, we've had to slow down with our in-person events, but that's also another opportunity to get to know other people in your area who are doing other things, because that was a big thing for me, because I feel like most of my circle is in the military, and I needed to kind of get out and meet civilians.
Expand that.
Yeah, expand it. And the VLC it's a great networking group. And one of my mentors had mentioned that to me when I was, talking about, okay, I'm getting out, what do I need to do? What do I need to be thinking about? Mm-hmm. And he was like, get involved with local veterans groups. And I was like, okay, I guess I can Google that, go to Meetup and find something. But that was a really big help to me. And it was funny because I did the core program at Deloitte. They did a 1-day core, which is a leadership program. They did it at Georgetown.
Okay.
And we sat at tables, and there was a coach from Deloitte at the table. And we went through transition stuff and our strengths and weaknesses. And it was a really great program. And they asked us all, what was your, one of the things you want to get out of this program? And I said networking, because I don't know a lot of people. And where I work in the Pentagon, we don't get out a whole lot.
No.
The puzzle palace, as people call it. So there's not a lot of opportunity to walk around and meet a whole lot of people. And I was like, I don't know a lot of people. I want to meet some more people. So one of the guys at my table, he was part of the Veteran Leadership Council, and he sent me a message on LinkedIn. He was like, hey, Courtney, we have this thing going on, VLC, and you said you wanted to network and meet more people. So here you go. And I was like, oh, this is great. So I went to the first meetup, and then when we had our initial engagement for 4Block to meet everybody, one of the members from the VLC was there at the 4Block. And I was like, what are you doing here? You're everywhere I go. What's going on? So he's also become a great mentor. So you have to get out and just meet people. And for me, I am an introvert. This whole pandemic staying at home thing, it doesn't bother me because I like being at home. So I have to get out of my bubble and purposely meet people. And that's why
out, right?
Yes. That's why I love LinkedIn, because you can engage with so many different people. And 4Block was so good because there were always so many people that we had an opportunity to meet. And I kind of messed up the first couple of weeks because I kind of met a few people, and I would go talk to them when it was networking time instead
Mm-hmm.
of meeting other people. So I kind of didn't network as much as I should have. So that's my my recommendation to anybody else. When you go to these events, talk to at least 3 people that you don't know. that you've never seen before.
That's good
And
advice.
it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a long, in-depth conversation, but, you can ask them, well, the topic of conversation now, of course, how did you survive the pandemic when the outside opens back up again?
Yeah, true.
That would be a great conversation starter. Did you learn anything new about yourself?
We
Did you
all
learn
went
anything new
through it.
about your spouse? Do you still like your kids? I mean,
And now you're a certified teacher at times for some parents. So
right.
there's plenty. Yeah, that makes sense. So what kind of tips, what's your most important tip that you would give a transition service member on the way out?
Take care of yourself. And by take care of yourself, I mean, figure out what it is that you really want to do. What would make you excited to get out of the bed every morning and just hit the ground running. Because for so long in the military, we do what other people need us to do. So now is the time where you have to think about what it is that you want to do and how you want to make an impact and what would make you excited about your life again. Because the transition is really an opportunity to start over again. Because you can reinvent yourself and you can do something that you've never done, something you've always wanted to do, or something that you've always been curious about, or to learn something that you never knew about. So it's a chance to be a better version or a newer version of who you are.
That's some sound advice right there.
Thank you.
So, hey, Courtney, it's been a pleasure. You talked about American Corporate Partners, 4Block. There's many different tools out there. Mm-hmm. If you want to connect with Courtney Cain, she's on LinkedIn. Just type in Courtney Cain. I think it's Courtney Cain 1 is the actual URL.
Yes.
I'll make sure to link this to you this afternoon. But again, I was scrolling through her activity, which is pretty good. It can get better though, so we'll talk about that later on. But okay. She had a small quote that I dug out from one of her activities in the past couple of days, and it goes like this: "No one is hiring you to be a veteran." Now, she may not have thought of that, but she used that in an activity, and she's right. So people will hire you based on what skills you bring to the table, your networking, a referral. They're not hiring you to be a veteran. They're hiring you to be something. Yes. So, Courtney, any last words for us as we bid you adieu?
So you are not going through the transition alone. Reach out to people who have transitioned because we want to help. And I think what a lot of us want to do is prevent others from making mistakes that we made. Because if it can be smooth and not as painful for somebody coming behind me, I'm going to do everything I can to help make it smooth for them. So reach out to people.
Reach out. You're not alone. No. And listen to the advice because we've all made mistakes. Mm-hmm. We all want you to do it better than we did it.
Yes. And leave your ego at the door.
Oh, true. Very true. Leave the ego.
Yes.
All right, Courtney. Well, yeah, I enjoyed having you today. Now you can get back to work doing your important Pentagon work at home. And we'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right. Take care, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Take care.
Bye.